Good afternoon YouTube, and welcome back to the channel and project E92 M3, where in today's video we'll be fitting the KW Has kit, so the height adjustable spring suspension, giving that custom look without sacrificing the electronic damping control. So in today's video we'll go through the full step-by-step, a little run through on what I've done to prepare the car, cleaning all the area for the working environment, sorting all the arches out because they're in absolute state. I will put a section in now which will just detail if you just want to go straight to the guide and you're comfortable with basics of jacking the car up. So if you don't want to hear me waffling for 10 minutes, I'll put the timestamp in that for you now to skip to. If you do follow the video, obviously it is at your own risk. I take no responsibility for it. All the torque settings have been sourced online. I'm not a BMW technician. I may have done things incorrectly, but if you do enjoy the video and you found it helpful, please consider liking and subscribing. Enjoy. So a quick overlook on the kit. As I said, this is a lowering spring kit to work with the standard dampers. Now the reason I've gone with this is on the e92 M3 that I've got, it's got the electronic damping control. So if you ended up putting coilovers on there, you lose the benefit of that feature, potentially have to code it out or buy modules to disable it. So this way we keep all the original dampers in place, but it gives us access to height adjustment. So you've obviously got the front spring. We've got a collar here, which is going to slide over the original damper. Now, looking online in the manual, it's 50-50 on whether this is going to be able to go on without a hydraulic press, but that's something we're going to explore in this video today. And as you can probably see, there are a slight change in there, just in the thickness. It's slightly narrower midway down, and then obviously you've got the stop on the original damper. You also get a new bump stop as well, which is shorter than the standard one. Obviously, these collars are height adjustable, so you can raise and lower the car to your stance. Now on the rear, you've got again revised bump stops and dust shields. Not sure if we're going to use these yet because I don't plan to go any lower on the rear than it currently is on the standard ones, and it saves us taking all the dampers out and disconnecting all the boot carpet, the EDC module, to get everything access to the rear of the car. Now obviously we've got the rear springs, and again, these are the height adjustment platforms that you can wind up and down to change the height. It's all pretty straightforward stuff. If you've installed coilovers before, it's very similar. You've obviously got your lock keys there and the manual, which we'll have a look at now. So a very brief look at the installation manual. So it looks like it's just pretty much printed off. It's not stapled together or anything. You've got various languages in here, so you just need to obviously scroll through to the English section, and you can see here it's got a picture of the standard damper, and the top hat or lower collar, I guess that we'll call it, is going to be removed. And it tells you here to just mark so that you know where the anti-roll bar point's going to go on the new one, which hopefully you can see there is what we need to line up, which we'll come to in a minute. And then once you remove that collar, you can then see obviously where we've got to try and slide down. And as per this one, I imagine mine's going to be the same. It's going to be full of crud, so we get a wire wheel on it or a bit of wet and dry just to clean it all up. Now it does advise to measure 76mm down the damper body, and the reason for that is, which we'll get to in a second, is you're going to need to slide that collar all that way down. If you don't, you're not going to be able to get that height drop that you're seeking or have been advised in the actual manual. So we've got some bits there with the bump stop where we've got to put the seal on it. It asks you to use this as some sort of press for it in your vise, but we'll go on to that shortly when I've got all the standard bits removed. And then, like I say, it says here that you've got obviously the sleeve on the front pressed down to that 76mm point, put all your dust seal back together, and then you've got your front damper complete. Moving on to the rear, pretty straightforward. Again, it advises that they will install a slightly shorter bump stop for the rear, Again, because I'm not going any lower than I've already got the car set to and I've had no issues with it grounding out, it's not going to be an issue for me. But obviously I will need to install the spring and the rear height adjustable collar so that we can obviously raise and lower the car. And like I say, I plan to lower the front about 10 millimeters from its current setup and keep the rear pretty much where it is. Now the reason I've gone for that, not just for the 10 millimeter in height drop, is I will be installing the M4 brakes front and rear, which when you put the M4 hubs on, lifts the front of the car, which is going to raise the height even further. So this is going to give me the opportunity to run the standard dampers at the desired height with the M4 brakes at a later date. So yeah, let's get the fitting underway. So with the car securely jacked up, as you can see on the two axle stands either side, and with the wheel removed, you can now see into the arch liner. This is the standard damper. This is the cap or hat or base that we're going to have to remove and put the sleeve on, and then obviously get rid of all the standard springs or eye-back springs as in my case. So but what I will do now is strip down all the arch liner and give it a good clean before we get underway, because it's a job I've been meaning to do for a long time. So the first step that we're going to entertain is taking it apart. Now I'm probably going to go a bit overboard because I'm going to remove the caliper and disconnect the ABS sensor line, and the reason for that is when you take the damper out and you pull the whole assembly forward towards you, you can end up putting load on those pipes and cables, which is not something I want to do. So what I'm going to do is remove the caliper, cable tie it back to the subframe just to keep it out of the way, and then we can drop the whole assembly, pull it forward towards us, because I've got a strong suspicion that I'm going to be seized in here, which is what happened on my other side. That's why in the spring fitting guide I ended up actually just fitting the springs while the damper was fitted to the hub. So we're going to have a bit of fun with this, I'm sure. But like I said, we'll get on with it now, and I will video a little time lapse for you guys. As you can hopefully see, a much cleaner area to work in now. I've treated the trims to a bit of vinyl and rubber care from Auto Gleam. Nothing fancy, but like you say, now everything is just clean, and I can start undoing the anti-roll bar bolts and then taking off the shock. I've already taken off the brake hose and ABS line off the strut, and then it'll be all top mount off and pull it all forward. So at this stage, it's important just to leave the last one there. And the reason for that, as you can probably see now, the whole damper assembly is starting to lower out of the car. If you was to just undo this final one, everything would fall out the bottom. But I say what we're going to do now is I can reach to the top of the car, undo the bolt, and then support all the hub as it comes apart, so it all doesn't just come crashing down. This is where it's also important to notice the taper on the drop link. As you can see, this side is flat, and on the reverse side we've got a taper edge, which will make more sense once we do fit that KW has collar on there, because it will have the taper on the other side to match the anti-roll bar drop link. So carefully lowering everything down, you can now see that the damper and the hub is all leant forward. Now this is the reason I removed the caliper, or if you wanted to disconnect the brake hose, but this way it saves me having to bleed the system. It just stops you damaging everything when you lower it forward. So the next tools for the job, a 21mm spanner and a 10mm socket. Essentially, 10mm socket will go on the top of the damper rod, and the spanner will undo the nut. Now you can't undo this until you've taken all the load out of the spring using spring clamps. If you don't do that and you undo that nut, the chances of that flying off and smashing you in the face are very high. So like I say, take your time with this. This is probably the most dangerous part of the job, I'd say. And once you've compressed these springs, which we'll have in the video now, the top hat should have loose movement in it to show that there's no tension on there. So with the marking completed to 76 millimeters and the sleeve just loosely pressed down so it still slides off, you can see that obviously I've got a fair bit of work to get that down. Now what I am going to do is take it back off, wet sand all the powder coat off this part of the damper, and then I'm going to cover it in ACF 50, which is like a corrosion protection spray. So as that press slides down, that should keep it preserved and prevent any rusting. Now without a hydraulic press, I've been advised this is going to be quite difficult, but I have had more than one person say it's doable without. So firstly, you've got to make sure you've got the right collar on. This has got right hand side listed on it. As you can see, this is where it would sit originally. You can see that taper and the taper on that side. If you had it the wrong way around, you wouldn't have the taper for the anti-roll bar link. So that is the right way to have that. Now in terms of hammering it on, you wouldn't want to hammer the lock ring because you'll end up damaging it, and also I wouldn't want to damage all this face. So what I'm going to use, or sacrifice potentially, is the old base stop, and all you need to do is flip it upside down, slide it down, and as you can see, it's nice and loose on the damper, but it gives us good coverage to hammer here and rotate this round to try and get that to slide down the base. And fingers crossed, we won't need a hydraulic press today. So using the 120 grit, I think it was, sandpaper, you can see I've now got a nice clean, no paint, no road crud on there that's going to stop it sliding down. Now a friend of mine installed the kit and he said it went on really tight. Now I don't know whether he did this same process, but he ended up doing a bit of damage to the bottom of his damper. So it's definitely something I don't want to do today because these are competition dampers. So like I said, I've just cleaned it up, taken the powder coat or paint or whatever the protection is. Gonna have a think for the next 5 minutes whether I cover it in ACF 50 or grease. And I've also made a little hacksaw mark, very minor, just for 76 mil, because obviously the marker pen was going to get rubbed off. Now when you slide down the Has kit, you've obviously got to remember to line it up. So you can now see, if I put that roughly in position, it's gone down a good another 10-12 mil after cleaning it up. Now you haven't got to worry too much because this step here is what's inside the collar there, so it's not actually going to just fall all the way down. It will only go to that point anyway, as long as you don't take away this collar here. So we'll now clean that up, put some grease or maybe, like I say, some spray on it, and then hammer that slider back home and see if we can get this on without a press. So with the damper body all cleaned up, I'm going to cover everything in a little bit of ACF 50 now, and then what I'll do is I'll slide the collar down, make sure I'm lined up with the anti-roll bar line, and then we'll have to hammer it all the way down to that mark. And there we have it, all done without a hydraulic press. So obviously it's gone right down to the base now. Everything's seated properly, no damage to the top, which is really nice. We have probably sacrificed that old one a little bit. It would still work, but the base is a bit flattened out now, so I don't know how well. I don't know, it probably would still sit on there. But as I say, I'm happy to have done that, to have saved myself £200 buying a hydraulic press just for this job. So the next step is to remove the dust cover, the bump stop, and there's like a seal ring in there which we will remove now. It's a bit tight. God. So it does suggest that in the manual you can use the KW sleeve to help press this in. Now to me, my vise didn't go wide enough. It didn't really look like a good option because you just crush all the foam, but what I found on the other side, might have to time lapse speed this just to make it look a bit more fluid. There she goes. So another hot day in the UK as well. It doesn't make this easy in the garage with a asbestos roof boiling in here. Right, there we go. So we've now got the ring on, that can go back in there, all back to standard in terms of dust seal protection. And like I say, you've got that shorter bump stop now if you are going to completely slam the car. One final thing to add on the front assembly is, you may not have seen it or noticed it, but as you put the top mount back on, there's actually a small stud that sits about there. So if you was to remove the strut brace, you'd actually see it come up through the hole. Well, I'm familiar with this because the E46 has got it as well, but you'll see there's like a little cut out there. You just need to make sure it's that direction when it all goes back together. Torque everything up and put the wheel back on and the brake caliper, and that's done. So in the rear, you can see you've got the standard bump stop there. As I mentioned, I'm not going to be going any lower than I am currently, and I've had no issues with it beaching out. If anything, I think I want the rear a little bit higher, because on the IBACs, full tank of petrol, it did look a bit slammed, stroke broken. So on the rear, that's your standard spring. You're going to get rid of this, and you're going to have the height adjustable platform there. You're going to obviously have the new spring from KW, and use the standard seat on the bottom. Now, to remove the rear, from memory when I did it last time, it's just these two bolts, all drops down. You can pull the spring out, make sure you remove the height leveling sensor, which is probably on the other side. Yep. And then, like I say, drop all of it out and then fiddle getting it all back in again, and hopefully I can get the height right the first time. So to remove the rear spring, you're going to need an 18mm socket, 21mm socket for that one, and then round the back, a 21mm spanner. The 18mm one is actually just threaded into the lower arm, so if you've got a lot of crud on there, it might be worth cleaning it up, spraying some WD-40 on it, but otherwise just gun those out, or as I'll show by hand because I've destroyed my impact gun, just a big breaker bar. So comparison between the iBack spring and the KW platform. So essentially the iBack is just a fixed unit. Obviously you can't adjust the height. For me, it always sat a little bit too low, so I'm hoping with the KWs to bring the rear up. Now you've obviously got the round edge, which is going to go back into the bottom cap, basically this thing that we're going to take off, and then up in the top we're going to remove this, and then this is going to go and sit up there instead. And essentially I've run that at 12 millimeters. So have a look what that sits like. Spring in place, you can see it's seated on the rubber boot, and then up on the top you've got the adjustable platform. Now at the moment that's just resting in place. The hardest part of this job is lining back up these bolts. Now the damper lower I'll leave till last, that's not such a big issue because you can manhandle that into position, but this hub into the lower arm can be a little bit tricky. So I'll use a trolley jack to raise it up. Make sure you've got plenty of copper grease on there so everything slides in nicely, and fingers crossed they get the height right first time. So me and my friend Sanj went out Friday night after fitting the kit, went for a good blast through some roads I normally go on, and do you know what? I expected just to do this just for the height drop, and what I can say is the car genuinely feels more planted with it, potentially less bouncy, especially in the softer settings. It is firm, I wouldn't say any firmer than the iBacks, but it feels like it recovers better, which I almost put down to old dampers. So for me, yes, the KW kit is more expensive than the likes of a set of lower end springs, but you get the benefit of being fully height adjustable, and like I say, for me the car just feels so much more planted to drive. So win-win. I'm really happy I went ahead with it. And like I say, because I will be going forward with the M4 brakes, which you need to fit the M4 front hubs, which raises the car roughly 5 to 10 millimeters. So that with a has kit now will mean when I fit that, I can bring the height back down again. So when you purchase the KW has kit, you have got to be aware that they do advise obviously to use specialist tools. There is mention of a press, but not a hydraulic press to put on the front collar, which we'll go into in the video. Now, thankfully, the guys on I think it's the M3 forum, it's not the M3 cut as what I normally use, a chap suggested sanding the damper body down to get the extra clearance to do it without a press. So I followed that guide. I've got to say thanks to him because it allowed me to do it. I'm sure there'll be those that say you shouldn't do that and potentially just press it on, but for me, especially like for many of you guys watching who are home tinkerers and that, it works perfectly, and it has done for me. And like I say, the car is driving absolutely fantastic. So thanks again to the guys on the forum who suggested the tip with sanding the stock damper down. So did a little exciting one or nerve-wracking one on the way over here, the speed bump test. So obviously the front is now probably 10 to 15 mil lower than I had it on the iBacks. I love the way it looks, but I was concerned that I was going to scrape every speed bump, and I've just come to my parents now. They've got this road that's got the old middle central speed bumps, which are a nightmare because obviously the wide cars stay low, but it wipes all the middle out. And pleased to report, as per this clip, so far so good. So the moment of truth, the thing that strikes fear into every lowered modified car owner, I'm sure, speed bump test. So these are pretty nasty. Oh, okay. First one, they get a little bit more aggressive as time goes on. On my breath again. Clear. We seem good. We do seem good. So I've got a little step one here as well. 20 mile an hour, all fine. Yes, so even with the reduced ride height, I mean, to give you guys an idea, when I was on the iBack springs with the standard under tray, it would very lightly scuff on this. So the under tray is obviously giving me masses of ground clearance. I'd say, I think in some parts 20-25 millimeters. And then, like I say, because of the lower ride height now, you would think we would catch as well, but we are clear. Good news indeed. So if you want to see more pictures of the car, check out the Instagram page. I'll be putting up loads over the next couple of weeks in various locations. I think it looks, like I say, absolutely brilliant now. It sits absolutely perfectly. The next video for the e92 M3, fingers crossed, before the Spanish road trip, we can get to Pinnacle Motorsport to go ahead with the half cage. And I have been chatting to the team there. Oh, it's going to look good, really good, proper race car look. So super excited to get that done. And like I say, fingers crossed we can get it done before mid-September so that we can get in the road trip as well, that we're going to be going across all the Spanish mountains. And we have, like I say, got a visit that we're going to be doing while we're over in Spain too, to a certain carbon fibre company for the afternoon. As always, guys, if you enjoyed the video, make sure you give the channel a like and consider subscribing. Like I say, it does help me keep building the channel. I've put a lot of effort into this video to give you guys as much detail as possible. Thanks for watching. Until next time.